One, building a simple, intentional evening routine. There was a time when my evenings felt like they disappeared into thin air. I'd wrap up work, glance at the clock, and somehow, without even realizing it, it was already time for bed. I wasn't doing anything meaningful. I'd just drift from one mindless activity to the next. That left me feeling like I had no control over my time. So I set out to change that by creating an evening routine that was both manageable and purposeful. I didn't want a rigid checklist. I wanted a rhythm that supported both rest and intentional living. My new routine began with one rule: start immediately after work. As soon as the workday ended, I committed to switching gears. Whether it was a short breathing session, a few stretches, or a brief walk around the neighborhood, I gave myself space to mentally leave work behind. That 5-minute buffer became essential. It helped me let go of work stress and return to my personal life with presence and clarity. Once I was grounded, the evening would flow in 3 stages: a mindful dinner, an enriching activity, and finally a period dedicated to winding down. Dinner became a moment to pause and recharge. The next hour was reserved for something productive but enjoyable, like reading, journaling, or tackling a personal project. And the final phase focused on rest, helping me prepare for sleep in a calm, intentional way. By breaking the evening into these 3 purposeful blocks, I transformed a once chaotic period into something restorative and meaningful. My routine wasn't just about squeezing in more tasks, it was about using time in a way that supported my well-being. A little structure brought a whole new energy to my nights, and that was the first step to reclaiming them. 2, creating a clear transition from work to home. I used to blur the lines between work and home life. The moment I finished working, I'd dive into something random: TV, social media, snacks, without taking a breath. That constant overlap made it hard for my mind to actually leave work behind. Even after closing my laptop, I was still mentally processing emails or conversations from earlier. It was exhausting, and it stole any chance of feeling truly relaxed in the evening. That's when I realized I needed a deliberate way to shift out of work mode. So I introduced a short reset ritual after each workday. It wasn't about doing anything complicated, just 5 to 10 minutes of something that let me pause and consciously switch roles. Sometimes I'd sit down and focus on deep breathing, allowing my mind to slow down. Other times I'd take a quick walk, listen to calming music, or do a few light stretches. These simple practices helped me disconnect and mentally draw a line between work and the rest of my life. This new habit changed how my entire evening felt. I was no longer carrying the tension and mental clutter of work into my downtime. I felt more refreshed, more focused, and more present. That small shift gave me a sense of control and allowed me to approach the evening with intention instead of autopilot. The best part? It set the tone for everything that followed. Whether I was preparing dinner, reading, or simply relaxing, I was doing it with a clear head. If you often find yourself dragging work stress into your evenings, this one change can make a massive difference. Give yourself permission to pause, reset, and step into the evening version of you fully and intentionally. 3, eating mindfully without distractions. For the longest time, dinner was just another task I rushed through. I'd throw something together, eat while watching YouTube or scrolling on my phone, and barely even notice the taste. It wasn't satisfying, and more often than not, I'd finish the meal feeling disconnected and distracted. Eventually, I started to ask myself, what if I actually paid attention to this moment? What if dinner became more than just another box to check? So I made a simple but powerful shift. I began eating without screens. No phone, no TV, no laptop, just me and my meal. At first, it felt unfamiliar. I was used to constant stimulation, but within a few days, I realized how calming it was to just sit and enjoy the food I'd prepared. I started noticing flavors, appreciating textures, and feeling gratitude for the meal in front of me. It wasn't just about eating anymore. It became a moment of grounding. To make it even more intentional, I began eating around the same time each evening. That gave my evenings structure and helped establish a rhythm I could rely on. Dinner became the first anchor in my nightly routine, a point of transition where I moved from work and stress into something slower and more reflective. Over time, I noticed that these quiet, focused meals helped me feel more centered and even improved my digestion and mood. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about being present. And that presence made the entire evening feel more meaningful. So now, instead of zoning out during dinner, I use it as an opportunity to check in with myself. That small change brought mindfulness into my life in a way I never expected. 4. Swapping screen time for enriching habits. Screens used to consume my entire evening. I'd scroll without thinking, hop between apps, binge watch shows, and somehow still feel bored and unsatisfied. I was spending hours on screens, but none of it left me feeling better. It felt like I was escaping, but not in a way that actually helped me recharge. That's when I decided I needed to break the cycle and intentionally replace screen time with something more meaningful. I didn't want to just cut out screens. I needed to add in things that felt nourishing, so I set clear boundaries. I added screen time limits to my phone, turned off non-essential notifications, and even deleted apps that I knew were just wasting my time. Without the constant pull of my phone, I had space to try other activities, things I hadn't made time for in years. Reading quickly became one of my favorite alternatives. I set a goal to read for at least 30 minutes each evening. Whether it was fiction to escape or nonfiction to grow, it was deeply fulfilling. I also returned to journaling, a habit I had dropped long ago. Writing about my thoughts or goals gave me perspective and helped me feel more connected to myself. On days when I needed background entertainment while cooking or cleaning, I started listening to podcasts or audiobooks. That way, I could still enjoy content, but it was intentional, not mindless. Little by little, my evenings became richer. I felt calmer, more inspired, and more in control of how I spent my time. It wasn't about cutting out all entertainment. It was about choosing content and habits that actually added something valuable to my life. And that change made my evenings feel alive again. 5. Prioritizing personal growth each evening. After stepping away from screens and adding more intention to my evenings, I started asking myself a bigger question. What if I used this time not just to relax, but to grow? Not in a stressful, nonstop productivity kind of way, but in a way that helped me feel proud, curious, and fulfilled. That shift in mindset completely changed how I approached my evenings. They went from being recovery time to becoming some of the most transformative hours of my day. I began with what I already loved, reading. I'd always admired people who read regularly, but I told myself I was too busy. So I made a commitment to read every night, even if it was just for half an hour. I picked books that sparked my interest. Some were inspiring, some were educational, others just entertained me. What mattered most was that they made me think. Reading helped me unplug while also feeding my curiosity. It was an easy win. Next, I started focusing on my physical well-being. For years, I'd put off exercise, blaming exhaustion or lack of time. But I realized I didn't need to hit the gym or run marathons. A simple yoga video, a short walk, or some light stretching made a big difference. I felt more energized, slept better, and even felt less anxious during the day. Movement became something I looked forward to. I also started meditating. Just 10 to 15 minutes of stillness helped me slow down, reflect, and breathe. Combined with journaling, this helped me process my emotions and clear my head. These habits didn't feel like chores, they felt like self-respect. The biggest lesson? Growth doesn't require hours of effort. Just a few intentional moments every evening can move you closer to who you want to be. 6. Introducing a proper wind-down routine. There was a time when I treated the hour before bed like a free-for-all. I'd scroll on my phone, binge-watch random videos, and let time slip away without even realizing it. I'd go to bed overstimulated and restless, wondering why I couldn't fall asleep easily or stay asleep. My mind was racing, my body was tense, and mornings became a struggle. That's when it clicked. The way I ended my day was setting the tone for everything that followed. I needed to create a wind-down routine, one that would help me transition into sleep with calm and clarity. So I began unplugging from screens at least an hour before bed. That one decision made a world of difference. No more blue light, no more endless content, no more brain stimulation when I was supposed to be powering down. Instead, I filled that time with soothing, screen-free activities. I'd read a book, write in my journal, sip on herbal tea, or listen to calming music. Sometimes, I'd even take a few moments to stretch or meditate. Whatever helped me relax and slow down. This quiet hour became sacred. I dimmed the lights in my room, kept the temperature cool, and made sure everything around me signaled rest. Over time, I found myself falling asleep more quickly and waking up feeling genuinely refreshed. I wasn't dragging myself into bed anymore. I was easing into it. My wind down routine became more than just a pre-sleep checklist. It became a ritual that helped me reflect, release, and reset. And perhaps most importantly, it reminded me that rest isn't something we just fall into. It's something we prepare for with intention and care. And when we do, our bodies and minds thank us for it. 7. Preparing for tomorrow tonight. Mornings used to feel like chaos. I'd wake up already behind, scrambling to figure out what needed to get done, what I was supposed to wear, and whether I even had time for breakfast. It was a daily rush that left me feeling overwhelmed before the day even started. Eventually, I realized the answer wasn't fixing my mornings, it was improving my nights. So I made a shift. I began preparing for the next day before going to bed, and that changed everything. It started simply. Every evening, I'd take a few minutes to map out my priorities for the next day. I'd jot down my top 3 tasks, both work and personal, and get them out of my head and onto paper. That small act of planning gave me mental clarity and helped me avoid decision fatigue in the morning. I woke up with direction instead of confusion. Then I started laying out my clothes before bed. It might seem trivial, but not having to make that choice in the morning saved time and mental energy. I even prepped my breakfast or lunch the night before, cutting fruit, making overnight oats, or portioning leftovers. That meant fewer decisions and less rushing when I was half awake. These evening prep habits didn't take more than 10-15 minutes, but their impact was huge. My mornings became smoother, my days started with confidence, and I felt far less stressed overall. I wasn't trying to do more, I was trying to worry less. And preparing in the evening allowed me to step into the next day feeling like I was already one step ahead. It's a small investment that pays off every single morning. 8. Prioritizing connection over isolation. After work, it's easy to sink into solitude, especially when you're mentally drained. I used to isolate without even realizing it. I'd go through the motions of the evening but never really engage with anyone. I'd sit at dinner checking my phone, spend hours in front of a screen, and convince myself I needed alone time. But deep down, I felt disconnected not just from others, but from life itself. That's when I made a conscious choice to bring connection back into my evenings. The first change was simple but powerful. No phones at the dinner table. That one rule created space for genuine conversation. Whether I was eating with a partner, family, or a friend, I committed to being fully present. We talked, laughed, listened, and suddenly dinner became something I looked forward to. It wasn't just about food, it was about connection. I also started reaching out to people more intentionally. A quick call to my parents, a message to an old friend, or checking in with someone I hadn't spoken to in a while. These little moments didn't require much effort, but they added so much meaning to my evenings. I realized how important it is to feel seen and heard, and to do the same for others. Even with my partner, I made an effort to be truly present. We'd go for a walk, play a game, or just sit and talk without distractions. That time together deepened our bond and made our evenings feel more emotionally fulfilling. Connection doesn't always mean long conversations or deep talks. It just means showing up with intention. When I started doing that, my evenings felt warmer, richer, and more alive because life feels better when it's shared. 9. Making self-care a daily practice. For a long time, I thought of self-care as something occasional, something I'd do on weekends or only when I was feeling completely burned out. But eventually I realized that waiting for a breakdown to take care of myself wasn't the smartest approach. So I began incorporating simple, soothing acts of self-care into my everyday routine, especially in the evenings. It wasn't about pampering, it was about restoration. Some nights that meant taking a warm bath, letting the day melt away in silence. Other nights, it meant applying my skincare slowly and mindfully, treating it as a mini ritual instead of a chore. I even started lighting a candle or diffusing essential oils, creating an environment that felt peaceful and welcoming. These little things became powerful signals that I was entering a slower, softer phase of the day. I also learned that self-care doesn't always have to be quiet time. Sometimes it's dancing around my living room to my favorite playlist, journaling with a cup of tea, or taking a few moments to check in with how I'm feeling emotionally. Whatever it looked like, the point was the same: to give myself permission to pause and recharge. These evening rituals helped me feel more balanced. They reminded me that even on chaotic days, I could still end with a moment of calm and intention. Self-care became my way of reconnecting with myself before bed, not as a reward, but as a necessity. And it's that consistency that created real change. Not in dramatic gestures, but in the steady act of caring for myself day by day. 10. Turning evenings into a space for meaning. Looking back, it's wild to see how much my evenings have evolved. What used to feel like wasted hours now feel like some of the most meaningful moments of my day. And the most incredible part? I didn't overhaul my entire life. I just made a series of small, thoughtful changes, each one adding a layer of purpose, peace, or growth to my nights. Over time, those layers built something beautiful. By creating structure, I stopped drifting. By reducing screen time, I opened space for fulfillment. By focusing on growth, I gave myself momentum. By planning for tomorrow, I eased my anxiety. By connecting with others, I felt more grounded. And by practicing self-care, I nourished myself in ways that helped me show up better for life. The truth is, your evening doesn't need to be packed with tasks or achievements to be valuable. It just needs to reflect what matters to you. Whether that's reading a few pages of a good book, spending quality time with loved ones, or simply sitting quietly and breathing, it all counts. It's all meaningful. For me, the evening became a place where I could grow without pressure, rest without guilt, and show up for myself without distractions. I stopped letting those hours slip by. Instead, I started using them with intention. And that one decision changed everything. If your evenings feel dull or directionless, start with just one change. One habit, one boundary, one intentional choice, and let that be the first brick in building something better, something that gives back to you every single night.